It is finally time to review Season 1 of Am I Actually the Strongest, and do make sure you stick to the end to get my final thoughts on this Season 1 of the show. Let's dive right in. Now, as this was an Isekai, I was immediately enthralled by the potential this show had in the early episodes. I thought the first episode had a lot of premise of like, okay, this baby being thrown out, discarded by his parents, and the ensuing trauma and bitterness and hate, anger that could spawn from that, I thought had a ton of potential if they chose to go that route. And initially, I thought, okay, they're maybe going down this route, like early on in the show. He does burn a bunch of people alive, even though they are villains, so to speak, and in multiple areas, at multiple times, showed his ability to be absolutely ruthless. I thought this was interesting, and again, had a lot of potential to show what he might turn into, or what he might grow into as a character, and how that whole journey arc could have been. But very quickly you realized just how unserious this show really wanted to be, and threw away all semblance of plot and storylines and narratives and characters and everything really, for the sake of comedy and just laid back, chill entertainment. Now, that is not to say it is horribly bad just because of that. Many shows don't have to be deeply impactful or meaningful or intriguing, like for example Frieren is in this full season, but I still find it a shame they chose to just discard practically every other thing to purely focus on this one sort of comedic area in this show, because you can still have humor, again, for example in Frieren, where you have these funny, humoristic moments while still having a immensely impactful and amazing story. And that is what initially made me dislike the show, because in the first 3 or 4 episodes, I was really intrigued, and I was invested in the magic system, in the world building, in the congruency and logical nature of how things were working in this world, as I usually am, quite infatuated with the details and how things actually work in these worlds. But from the moment that he basically just invented Netflix by connecting into his old world's internet or whatever, I was lost. Like, that just killed the enjoyment for me for what I was trying to find in this show, which was plot, which was proper congruency, systems, logic, world building, all these things. Because it wasn't explained, it was just thrown in, and that's it. Like, no explanation, doesn't even care. But after that initial shock, per se, I reframed my mind on the show, because in that intervening period, the show started to grow on me in terms of the comedic value, in terms of just the pure entertainment value that the show could provide at times, and that it did increasingly provide towards the end of the season. And that brings me to perhaps the strongest point of this show in its first season, and that is its characters. That is not to say that these characters are complex, that's not to say that these characters are deep or complex in their nature, but it is to say they are entertaining, cute, adorable, fun, and fun interactions just by being themselves, and especially by interacting with each other. This specifically for me applies to Flay, to Charlotte, and Iris, as I think those 3 are all very enjoyable, fun characters. Even characters like the Lolly Professor, I think, is quite fun to watch, as they just really have fun with things, and they really don't take themselves too seriously, or the show doesn't take itself too seriously, so these characters can just sort of be bombastic and be like absolutely absurd at times, while still having it be quite fun. Just the whole arc, for lack of a better word, that Charlotte goes through, from being this prim and proper young noble lady, being corrupted basically by Haruto and anime, to becoming a completely weeb-addicted young girl that is just infatuated with watching Haruto be this comic book hero, and watching on her own sort of fantasy world, real-life anime screen, seeing him defeat villains and such, and beat bosses, was just adorable. And her as a character was just absolutely adorable and hilarious, and you just really wanted to protect her with your life and just watch more of her. Same with Flay, being a over-the-top, violent, bombastic, but caring sort of companion to Haruto. Her personality really shining through and being an enjoyment basically whenever she showed up. And Iris as well, later in the season when she was introduced, being a very ditzy personality, and being absolutely oblivious, even more so than Haruto, but doing it in a way that was very cute and wholesome, and made you smile to yourself as you watched. all these things, and specifically these characters, I found quite good in this show. And that is really what carried the show for me, and which made me not say it's good, but say it's entertaining, and say it was a show that I could recommend to people if they ask me, hey, do you have like an isekai or a fantasy show that isn't really serious? I don't really have to think, I don't really have to really consider how things are going or what characters are doing, but that I can just sort of come back home after work, sit back in my couch and be like, I just want to watch something funny, entertaining, and just be able to turn my brain off without really worrying. Then I can be like, yeah, am I actually the strongest? Will probably be a good bet for you. Like, it's some decent entertainment in its first season, if you can get over the humps I already mentioned. It even does some self-irony and makes a joke of itself sometimes as well. Not as much or as good as some other shows do. Eminence in Shadow, cough cough. But still, it does a decent attempt at it the few times it tries for it. But in the end, even though it is a, let's say, 6 out of 10 for me, for the things they actually were able to showcase in the first season, it could have been so much better if they actually took the time to build out the storyline, build out characters, build out a fleshed out world, like I mentioned earlier in this video. Just the, let's say, evil, scorned Haruto arc could have been really fun to see. Him going down a path of being, let's say, evil, or at least chaotic and neutral, being ruthless, violent, maybe dealing with his past trauma for being abandoned as a baby, and maybe trying to atone for that and grow over that and get over that over the course of the season could have been great. They even showcase they have the ability to have characters grow over time, as we see with the prince, for example, where he was a cocky, stuck-up brat when he was a kid, gets handily beaten by Haruto, but then 5-6 years later, after the time skip and they meet in school, he respects Haruto. He has become a better man, a better person because of his defeat, and has grown, even though all of it was off screen, basically. But it still showcases that they have the ability to make these arcs and create these characters that can have really interesting paths and storylines and developments. They just really chose not to do that, sadly. In the end, they seemed to simply disregard everything in this show, in my opinion, on the altar of comedic relief and being a laid-back, super chill show. Which, yes, while I can appreciate to an extent, it could have been so much more nonetheless. With all that being said, what do you think of Season 1? Like it, hate it, leave all your thoughts or more down in the comment section down below. And if you did like the video, please do like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff to support my channel. And if you want to watch another season review of a show in the fantasy genre, then click right here.